Yep. Good morning, everyone. Yep. Last session we learned about how to handle built-in hooks we are learning. In React hooks, we discussed about use effect. Use effect is the hook. So we discussed detailedly about use effect hook. Earlier, we know about only the mount option, how the mount option works. We discussed about that. But now we learnt about how to handle two concepts. What is this written here? What is this written? In use effect, what is that written option? What is this written? So what is the concept of written? Written is used to handle unmount. If you want any actions to perform on unmount, then those actions are defined by using what? Written. Written defines the actions to perform on unmount, right? That is important. So dependencies, later you will learn more concept because according to the situation we have to use these dependencies. Already one example I showed you about dependency. When we created our own hooks, we can manage the dependency. So we learnt about how to handle the mount and unmount phase. So some questions also. Can we have multiple mount options inside a component? Yes, we can have. So depending on the situation. So if there are dependencies, one mount will execute. If no, another mount will execute. You can have multiple. So if anyone asks what is the purpose of multiple mount? What is the purpose of multiple mount? What do you answer? The purpose of multiple mount is to handle conditional rendering. We learned about conditional rendering. Na? Conditional rendering means what? According to the situation, it will render different types of content. So, conditional rendering is the key concept. So, after understanding use effect, that is one built-in hook available. It is for controlling mount and unmount. Next, important, we have use state. Use state. So, what you already know about use state? What you already know about use state? It allocates a memory and allows to store some data in the memory so that we can use the data across requests in a component. Why to use state? Why not variables to store data? Variables are immutable and state is mutable. So it is always recommended to store mutable data in use state. so that we can store. And why you need state explained already. We need state because HTTP is a stateless protocol. Stateless protocol means it cannot remember information between requests. To store data and use, we need this use state, right? So already we know it, but we will make a simple definition here. Second hook is use state. Use state. It configures a local state. It configures a local state for component. State allocates memory where you can store data and use it as I use it across requests. State allocates memory where you can store data and use it across requests. Use it across requests. So what kind of data you can store in a state? Any type of data. So state can handle any type of data. It can be like primitive or what non-primitive. State can handle any type of data, the primitive type or non-primitive type. You can manage any kind of data. And what is the advantage? State is mutable. It can change according to situation. And if you remembered already, I given several FAQs related to use state. When we learnt about it, already I given you some questions. How they ask in interviews about state. What are the questions I given in use state? Remember, na? So the questions I given you about use state is, can we configure state using var and let? Can we configure state using var and let? Already given, huh? Can we configure with var and let? Yes. Then why we use only const every time? Because a state must be initialized. Without initialization, you cannot use the state. And if it is var or let, you can skip initialization. Because you learned JavaScript, var let need not to be initialized. You can assign. Constant means you must initialize. Then another question asked in interview is, if it is const, then how I can store new value into it? Because const will not allow assignment now. Then how to store some new value into it? We will not assign to state. We will reinitialize the state. State is not assigned. State is what? Reinitialize. It is reinitialize. So all these answers, questions I given. Already I given those questions and answers, right? Now, after learning these hooks concept, I will give some tasks related to topics, every topic wise. Some tasks I will post into our lab group. You have to submit and try those. What questions asked related to pick. So those what tasks are given in your practical interviews when you attend interviews on React, how they give the tasks. I will give you them, you have to try them. If you are unable to solve in class, I will explain them. So these questions already we discussed, answers, everything we learned. So use state, actually it is configured in this way. So a constant, it will have a getter and have a setter, is equal to use state. You can initialize any value. So into the setter, later if you want some pass some new value using the setter. Using the getter, you can get the value. This is storing value and this is reading value. So that is state. So memory management related, one important hook is use state. Already we used in so many examples, no need of giving any example for that because every day, everywhere we used use state, right? And we know how to configure, how to access, how to store the data into it. Now, next important in the hooks of React, this memory related, another important is use context. Another important hook is use context. So use effect, use state, use context. These are all built-in hooks. That means React library already have them. So what is use context? Actually in web development, any web technology you are learning, every web technology, every web application have a context memory. Everywhere you will have a context memory. What is this context memory? For example, see, generally every web application have this memory. Suppose we are having, this is server and we are having a page 1. So we have page 1 and page 2. We are having 2 pages, page 1 and page 2. Now we requested page 1. When we requested page 1, page 1 is loaded onto server, and for page 1 some memory is allocated. For page 1 the memory is allocated. All the transactions will happen in that memory, and after we finished page 1, we are moving to page 2. From one page to another page we are moving, then the memory allocated for page 1 is deleted. It is deleted and page 2 is loaded. When page 2 is loaded, this page 2 have its own memory. The page 2 is having its own memory. It is having its own memory. Suppose in page 1 we stored some result like x is 10. Now page 2 cannot access this X because it doesn't know at all. Whatever happened in page 1 is not known to page 2. Because in web applications, any technology, web applications use HTTP. HTTP is a stateless protocol. It will delete the page related details, all the memory about the page after the page is finished. When you move to next page, the memory is cleaned up, deleted. That is okay. This concept is okay. Now the question is it possible that I can access and display another page in the same page? I am watching a page. Is it possible to access another page and display that page inside that page? Is it possible to display page 2 inside page 1? It is possible. Generally, in your HTML, you might have learnt iframes. Huh? You learnt iframe. Through iframe, what you can do? You can embed another page into the current page. Not only that, you can do that with your Ajax also. You learnt Ajax. By using Ajax request, you can bring the content and another page into the current page. Without reloading the page also, you can do that. That's what Ajax teaches you in JavaScript. You can bring another page in your page. Now what is the point here is, the concept is, for example, this page, we requested page 1. When we requested page 1 and when we are moving from one page to another, memory is not accessible, it is deleted. But when you requested page 1, the memory allocated for page 1, this memory is called as context memory. That means every page have a context memory. What is the speciality of this context memory is, whenever you request another page into this page, that means not moving from one page to another page. You are bringing another page and loading in the current page. When you load another page into the page 1 and you are watching page 2 in page 1, then page 1 context memory is accessible to this one. That means the memory of page 1 is accessible to page 2. But if it is separate, means after page 1, page 2 is coming, then it is not accessible. Context memory is the memory of a page which is accessible to other pages that run within the page. What is this mechanism known as? In JavaScript, you learnt about this mechanism. Huh? What is this mechanism known as? The members of outer are accessible to inner. This mechanism is called as closure. You learn now? Every function have a closure. What is closure mechanism? The members of outer block are accessible to inner block. That means what happens is, the memory allocated for page 1, it is accessible to page 2. What is advantage now is, you can transport the data from one page to another. That means you can transport the data from page 1 to what? Page 2. The data of page 1 is available to page 2. Now, do you know in interviews what they ask? They ask like, this already we can do, by using properties. Na? Already we learned parent component can access a child component. Inside the child component, parent component can pass some data. Child components uses the data. How data is passed? By using what? Properties. By using properties, parent component can send its data to child. Then the interior question is, then why I need this context memory? If anyone asks what is the purpose of context memory, our answer is to send data of parent to child. Is directly the parent data accessible to child? No. That is accessible only through context. It is not directly accessible. Then interior will ask like that I can do with properties also. A parent component can pass data to child component using what? Props. We learnt na? That means child component will get the data from parent and it will use it. Then why you need context memory? Context memory is not available if the data, if the page is outside. It is available only when it is inside. Here I am talking about pages. Actually, in your React, they are components. Just to explain general websites, I am giving the word page. But actually, this is outer component, inner component. The data of outer component is not accessible to inner. And for that already we have properties. Then why you need this context memory? Question understood? Is it reasonable? Because sometimes when interviews, when you face questions, some we can feel that they are not reasonable also. Because sometimes interviewers, what they know about the technology, they try to ask you. Sometimes what they know, what they use in their projects, it's not global. That means it's not necessary that everybody have to do it. That's the reason many times questions are not reasonable. That means he will ask like, do you know this hook? That is a third party hook. If I don't use that third party, how do I know that hook? I never know that hook. That means we can simply say that I never used that third party in my project. I used some other third party. And there the hook name is different. Right? So the point is, question is reasonable. Then what is the solution? What is the answer? Parent component can send data to child using properties. Then why you need a context memory again? Now tell me one point. Parent component can send data to child. In every situation, can it send? In every situation, can a parent component can send data to child component? Not possible. That is possible only when child component is a controlled component. Am I right? Every component is a controlled component? No. Many components we have uncontrolled components. That means, for example, what we are having, for example, this is the parent component. That is the parent component. In the parent component, you have a child component. We have a child component. But the child component is not a controlled component. It is not a controlled component. It is absolute. Absolute means it is independent. It doesn't require data from parent. It is independent. That means child component have its own presentation. It doesn't depends on parent. In that case, if child component is not a controlled component, then obviously it will not have properties. It will not have properties. If it is not a controlled component, why you are using in parent? Just for presentation, reusability. Suppose I showed you, we designed some Netflix. When we design Netflix register component, anytime I use the register component is same. 10 times I use the component, 10 times it is same. It will not change. In that case, it is what kind of component? It is an uncontrolled component. So if it is an uncontrolled component, it will not have properties. Na? If it will not have properties, then how you will pass the data? That means child component, if it is a controlled component, you can pass data with properties. If it is an uncontrolled component, then properties are not available. Then what is the solution? You have to pass by using what? Context. Through context memory, we can pass the data to whom? Child. This is very common question because everywhere they ask this question regular. That means they say that why I need a context memory? Because already properties are there. Through properties I can pass. Properties you can pass only when the component is what? Controlled. If component is not controlled, you cannot use properties. Then what is the way? We have to transport by using context. So what is context memory in web applications? What is context memory in web applications? It is the memory allocated for a component and available to the child components. The components that run within the context of parent, they can use that memory. Is it accessible to component which is outside context? It is not possible. It should be only inside the context. So that is the meaning of context memory. And remember, important point is, what is our hook name? Use context. So it is to use the context memory, but not to create context memory. That means it is a hook which can use context memory if there is a context memory. Java, .NET, PHP, Python, and Node, other applications, they have a default context memory. That means automatically in Java, .NET applications, context memory is created for every page. But in React, context memory is not created. Context memory is not created for a component. If context memory is not created, then how to use it? What is use context? Its name itself tells that it is used for using context memory. If you have to use context memory, there must be context memory. In other technologies, context memory is automatically created, so we can use it. But in React, context memory is not created for component until or unless you need it. So, in order to use context, first you have to create context. First you have to create context. A context memory is not by default available. That is available in many web technologies. But in React.js, context memory first need to be created. If you want a context memory for component, you have to create it and then you can use it. Generally in other technologies, for every page, when a page is created, a context memory is created. It is automatically created. But in React, we have to create context and we have to use context. When to create context memory? When to create context memory? When we want the data to be transported from parent to child. Understood? When we want the data to be transported from parent to child, then we need a context memory, right? So how this works, we will see. So first what we have to do, first we have to create the context, then we have to use that context. Directly use context will not work. You have to create the context. Let's see the point here. So many things are there to understand, right? Context is the memory allocated for a parent component. Allocated for a parent component. So that it is accessible to the child components that run within the context of parent. Context is the memory allocated for a parent component so that it is accessible to the child component that run within the context. So the child component at any level of hierarchy, inside parent can access the context. The child component at any level of hierarchy inside parent can access context. So that is context. Any level of hierarchy means parent have a child, inside the child another child, in that child another child. Any level of hierarchy can access the component. So context is created explicitly by using create context, create context method. Context is created explicitly by using create context method. So syntactically, context name is equal to create context. Create context, and into that context you can store anything. Null, that means context is a memory, it is expecting data inside. Null indicates that I will take the data dynamically at runtime, right? So null expecting data at runtime. Right. Data at runtime. So context is created by using create context. After creating context, we have to use the context. That means how do we define the context? So you can access and use context from any child element by using use context hook. By using use context hook. We have to use that use context hook. So how the syntax works? So reference name is equal to use context and the context name. Context name. So whatever is present in the memory of this context, now you can access by using this reference. Data is stored into the context. The data is accessible by using this reference. And remember, here one more important concept is, here when you are working with the context, child elements can be two types. Actually, parent is having context memory. This is the context memory of parent. In the context memory of parent, actually, in that context memory, one child is there. This is one child component. It is inside the context. That means I will give here like this. So suppose this is the context memory, and in that context, this is the context scope. This is the context scope. Now what happens is, and this is the parent. Suppose this is the parent we are having. Parent have a context scope. We have another child which is outside that scope. Another child which is outside that scope. Now for a parent, a context memory is allocated. This is the scope of that memory now. It is accessible only to this child. It is not accessible. This is not accessible here. That means there can be several child components, but we have to make sure that the child component is within the scope of context. Some child components may be outside the scope of context. Now, how do you mention the scope? Saying that for only these components, allow the memory. For other components, don't allow the memory. That means every context memory have a scope. That means child components can use the context only when they are inside that scope. How the context scope is created? Outside context scope, you can have child component. Inside context scope, you can have child component. Outside context scope, any child component is there, it cannot access the data. The data is accessible only inside the scope. How the scope is created? Context scope is created actually. Context provides a scope so that child components within the context scope, so that child components within the context scope can access the context memory, so that child components within the context scope can access the context memory. So context scope is defined using DI mechanism. DI is dependency injection. So actually we have a syntax like this. We have context name provider is equal to the value. And the context name we need to end. Now this is the context scope. That means a child component should run here. Actually this is child 1. Outside this context you have some child 2. So what is the point child 2? It cannot access context memory. It cannot access the context memory. So if child 2 have to access the context memory, it should be inside the context. That means when you create a context have a scope. And I already told you, in dependency injection mechanism, you will have a provider, you will have a consumer, and you will have a injector. Provider, what is the role of provider? The role of provider is locating the values in memory, and providing those values to the consumer. Locating the values in memory, finding the values in memory, and giving them to the consumer. That is the job of home provider. And consumer will use the values given by the provider. So provider is responsible for searching for your values in memory, locating the values in memory, accessing and giving them to the consumer. Consumer can use the values. So if the child component is not in provider scope, if it is not in provider scope, then it cannot access the memory, right? Let's see this example. First, we will see a basic example, how to handle, how do we work with this. A simple basic example we will see. Then you can understand how to handle that. I will create a new component by name context demo. Context demo.jsx. Okay. So export function context demo and return a simple presentation here. And this is the parent component. That is the parent component. Let's put this context demo. Okay, that is the context demo. Okay, fine. Now what we will do here is we will go to the startup. So here we are adding some deep, this is like some padding 4 and the BG dark, text white. Okay, that's enough. So we have a parent component. So this is the parent component. Yeah, this is the parent component we are having. Now, in the parent component, let's create another one, export function. So this is level 1 component. Return a simple presentation and a heading. This is level 1. So class margin 4, padding 4, BG warning. Okay, that's fine. Now you can see this is level 1. I will access the level 1 inside the parent. Level 1 component is accessed inside the parent. So there is level 1 inside parent. So the parent component, inside the parent component, child, level 1 is there. Okay. I will create another component called level 2. This is like BG danger. And this is level 2. Level 2 I will access in level 1. So here we will give level 2. In level 1, level 2 is access. That means now you see level 2 is in level 1. That means we have a hierarchy of components, one component inside another, in that another. Already we created this kind of design. When we learnt about Netflix, like example, Netflix index, in that main, in the main we have register. Already we have a component inside component. Now this level 1 is not a controlled component. If it is a controlled component, from here I can pass the data. And level 2 is also not a controlled component. Now I want the data to be passed from this component to both of them. Whatever data will be in the parent component, that data must be inside the chain. I need to access and use everywhere. I want data in such a way that the data of this parent should be accessible to these two. Suppose in the parent component, you create a variable or you create a state. Generally, this is not accessible here. It's not available. Because the variables and the states that you create, they are accessible only to this component. They are not accessible to child. For example, you see here, in the context, I am configuring constant user set user is equal to use state. User is John. Here I can put the user here. I can put the user. What is that user? I can access that here and it is available there. Can I access that in level 1? This is level 1. Can I access that in level 1? In level 1, I am trying to use user. Am I right? And you can see it is not available. Because the memory of one component is not accessible to another. Even if it is a child component, the memory is not accessible. So you cannot use that here. What is another technique you learned? From here, you can use props now. But my child component is an uncontrolled component. So if it is a controlled component, it will take properties, but it is uncontrolled. It is independent. Then how you pass the data into this? This is the key concept. So first, what we have to do is globally, first we have to create context. Temporarily, I am giving user context is equal to, what is it? Create context. Create context is a member of React library. You can import it, and default it is expecting null. Default is null because I'm expecting value into it dynamically, into that create context. So context is created. Now you have to mention the scope. In the parent, this is the parent. In the parent, what is the scope? So I want the context to be used here now. I want the context to be used here. Then what I will do? Here I need to use an context provider. I need to use a context provider. What is the context name? Context name is what? User context. I have to use user context. User context. This is the scope. This user context have a provider. That means this context is having a provider. Into the provider, you need to configure. Into the provider, you need to configure the value. What is the value? User. User is nothing but whatever username is there, that username will be here. Now, the components that run inside the context. This is the parent. Yeah, the components that run inside the context. The components that run inside the context. Which component is running? Level 1. This context can use this one. That means it can use the data. How level 1 can use the data? How level 1 can use the data? Context is available to level 1 now. How level 1 can use the data? In level 1, we have to use context now. Constant, some username is equal to what it is? Use context. Which context it has to use? User context. Then whatever value is available inside this user context is now stored here. I want to access and use that here. That means I want to get the username here. Username here. And you can see the username have to display there. But what is that username here? Context. That is the context provider. Na? So why it is not accessible here? Actually, the user context requires a value. It is currently null. Now, how do we pass the data into this? So see the memory. What is the memory? It is null. That means this user context is used by using use context. This memory is using it. Through that memory, you can able to access it. But actually, this is inside this scope. Actually, provider uses a value. That means generally, how do you write this provider is not directly provider. We have an option like this. The user context dot provider. We have to use user context dot provider. This user context dot provider, this provider will use a value. That value will be whatever the user value you pass. Inside the context provider, this should work. Which one should work? Level 1 should work. Level 1 should work. That means every context is having a provider. This provider is going to collect the data from memory and provide as a value. This value can be accessed by the component which is running here. So context needs a provider to be configured with some value. So here, what is the point? Context name is using a provider and with a value. So how you configure this? This is just basic syntax. What is the provider? Provider is a member of context service. Provider is a member of context service. It uses the value and injects into the child component, index into the child component. Provider is a member of context. And syntactically, you have to use context name dot provider. Value is equal to whatever the value you want to provide. And here you need to use the child component that you want. So this DI dependency injection have so many more concepts to understand. I will tell you in next other concepts also. And whenever you are giving these context names and everything, you should be careful, because whatever the name you give for the context, it is not a keyword, it is not any another hook name which is inbuilt available with React. You have to be careful with that. So here you see it is showing some error. What is it? It is saying that you have a complex context demo. Check the render method. You see built-in components have some problems. Built-in components are having some problems. What are the problems in built-in components? That means actually this is a user context, because use context is already a name. Okay. That is the context provider. Now the data is accessible from the parent to child. Right? So what is the context name? Context name is what? User context. It will use a provider. Through the provider, it can access the value and it can inject the value to whom? Level 1. That means how level 1 will use it? It will use the context. Through the context, it can access the name and it can implement it. Now I want the same value in level 2 also. Whatever value is here, I want that here also. Then what happens? Level 2, where is level 2? Here also you can configure a constant. What is it? Username, use context. Every child component can use the context of parent. And what is the context name? User context. User context. And through that it can access the username. How to access username? We need to define username. Then it is accessible there. That means the data from the parent is now available to all the child. At any level of hierarchy, you can access. You can dynamically put that while user is typing. Dynamically, you can put that while user is typing. That means, for example, this name should be taken dynamically. You can do that. That's not a problem. What we will do, here we will put a text box. So here we will put a text box. So here what we will do, here we will ask a text box. Input type is equal to text. Placeholder I will give username. Okay, when user is typing the username, this username is actually empty. We have to write a function handle name change, e set user e dot target dot value. And when text box is changing, on change, handle name change. So when user is typing the name, the username will be taken into the state. First it will take that into the value. It will set into the state, and that is being used into the context provider. We are sending that username, and it is accessible to level 1. Level inside level 1 there is level 2. That means you see inside level 1 we have level 2. That means already level 1 is in the context and level 2 is inside level 1. That means both can use the context now. That means now here you entered the username, it will get everywhere. That means now data is transported from the parent component to the child. So in interviews, this is very popular question in React.js. So at fresher experience level, one of the popular question in React interviews is how to transport data from one component to another. You have to tell all the techniques. One technique is that is from one component to another component, you can transport by using state. You remembered I told you local storage, session storage, another one is what? Cookies. Through all those techniques we can do. But from parent to child component, for that we have which one? Context. Later you will see so many others also. Actually we can transport using properties also. But properties is only when the component is what? Controlled component. If component is not a controlled component, then we have to pass the data like this. Now if anybody asks, what is the real-time example for this? Where, in which situation, my child component needs the data from parent? Now what is the real-time situation for this? Where you see this in real-world design? In real-world website implementation, where you will see this mechanism. That parent is sending to child, child is collecting the data and using it. Everywhere it is there. For example, when I open Amazon, you see this is actually this is a search component. Actually this is header component. Am I right? That is header. And below the header you are having a section component. Am I right? There are two components, header and section. Now in header component there is a search bar. In the search bar, user is searching for mobiles. Now it will show the list of mobiles here now. Am I right? How the data is transported from this component to this component. Both are in same location. The parent and the child. Now what happens is from header component, we need to transport data to the section. That means when I type the word here mobiles something, so mobiles, and click on search button, the result will come below. How the result is coming below? That means how this data of mobiles is transferred here. Actually both are separate components. I already told you React application is component based. It is component based. Now how you transport the data? This is a child component only. You are not moving from one component to another. So that is the parent and child. From parent to child, we can pass the data in two ways. If this is a controlled component, you can pass. If it is an uncontrolled component, we have to send using context. How you say that it is not a controlled component? It is not a controlled component because if I don't give any search, by default it shows everything now. Suppose if I don't give any search, then what it will do? If I don't give any search, by default some home comes. Am I right? That means now the data that is displayed inside this area, is it dependent on this search button? No, it is not dependent on the search button. Without searching also it can show data, na? Right? The data is not dependent on search bar. If you enter anything in search bar, it can collect the data and it can use the data. That means the section, what it is showing, it is not dependent on search bar. You don't type anything search bar, it doesn't matter. It will show some content. It have its own functionality. That means we need to transport data from the parent to child. Parent to child. So let's implement this kind of mechanism. That means we can implement this type of mechanism. Already we know shopper template, na? Same kind of mechanism we can use here. So fake store, you can try and you can use it. Let's see one point here. What is this? Example I will copy. This is the example you need to know. So example, that is a context demo dot what JSX. So I will copy this context demo dot JSX. In this, remember, for your understanding sake, I kept everything in one place. In next level, when you learn routing, you will have different files. All files you can import and you can use. Okay. Let's implement that search like concept. Search like concept. For example, you see now, this is another example of context. So I will put a new component called Amazon something. Amazon.jsx. Okay. So export function Amazon and return a simple div. So this is a class container fluid. Now here we are having a search bar. So I will give a nav. I'm not creating complete design, just only a header. So Amazon. Okay. And here I will keep a search bar. Class input group. And just put a input type text. So placeholder search amazon.in. We have a button btn warning bi search. Okay. This is a simple nav bar we are having. Border 1 padding 2 something. I will keep this Amazon in the startup. Amazon in the startup. Then actually the output is this. Now I will just keep Amazon with navbar as deflex, justify content between. Okay, like this we are having. I have another div in the button class btn warning bi person fill. Okay, here I given sign in. Fine, that is the button we are having. For this text box, I will put a class form control. There is a search bar here. Just a basic design I created. Now, this is the parent component. Now below this nav bar, we have a section. In the section, I have a class margin top 4. Here, I want the search results to come. In this, I need a component which should get and display the search results, right? So here I will design another component, export function. I will give the component name as suppose main component. Okay, return here. I will put it container. Actually, this is just class. Some adding 4 is okay. Now just refer, I will give as main component. I want to access the main component here. That means here I need to put the main component. Then you can see the main is here. Just roughly I kept the heading. But what is my intention when anybody types and click on search button, the topic he is searching for, those results must come here. That means main component have to show the products that user is searching for. Electronics, fashion, whatever products. That means here main component should collect the data and display the data. And what we need to do here is whatever data entered, we need to pass it here. Right? We need to transport the data here so that this component collect the data, filter the data related results and display them. So how do you transport data now? We need to create a context memory. This is parent now. Inside the parent, this is child. Am I right? We need to transport data from parent to child. And this child is an uncontrolled component. It is not having any properties or anything. So let's see how to do that. So this first we need to create a context. LET, what is it? Suppose search context. Search context is equal to create a context. We are creating context and it is default as set to what? Null. Now what is the scope of context? Search context scope is this area na? This area. So how you define that? We have to use, what is it? Search context dot what? Provider. You see there is a provider. And this provider will take a value. Value is coming from, suppose we have a constant search term and set search term is equal to use state. It is empty now. So it have to use that search term. Am I right? And inside this, the main component should able to access the search term and use it. That is the scope we have provided. Now search term comes from this text box na. So what we will do? So we have a function handle search change E. Set search term. What is it? Actually, set search term we will use E dot what? Target dot value. And text box on change. On change is what? Handle search change. But I want the value to be submitted on button click. Then constant search and we have set search is equal to what? Use state. It is also a string. What we will do is function handle search click. Okay. On search click, we will set search with the search term. Am I right? What is the intention is, while typing, don't search. After typing, when they click the button, then search. So when they type, first collect the name, store in one memory. When they click the button, you assign to another memory, and this memory search will be used here. We have to use the search. And on button click, on click, what is it? On click, handle search click. On search click, we are sending data to the memory. That data need to be collected in main, and it should use it. So what I will do now, in the main component, how to collect the data. So we have to use let. What is it? Search term is equal to, we are collecting from which context? Use context. What is the context name? Search context. From here, search string is coming. Search string is coming. So what I should do now? I will use effect. I will collect all the data that belongs to that search term. Okay. Then we will use a constant, and constant is products. What is it? Set products is equal to use state. It is an array. I am expecting an array of products. Array of products are nothing but ID, name, so many details will be there. Now, when this component loads, use effect, we have to get the data using what? Axios. Axios dot what? Get. Okay. Get from which URL? https:// what is it? fakestoreapi.com/ what? Products/ what? Category/category name. Category name is coming from search term. Category name is coming from parent search bar. From the search bar, category name is coming. We will use it. And you know, after then on success, what we have to do? Collect the response. This response we need to set into products. So response dot what? Data. All the response data is into the products now. Am I right? This products data we need to display in the main component. I will remove this main component. Means heading I am removing. I want to just display all of them in a div. I will put a class as a dflex, just like this. And here I want to display, what is it? Products dot what? Map. Read every product. For every product, actually lot of details we can display. Temporarily what I will do, for every product I will create a div, and in this div we will have a key. Key is what? Product dot id, and here we will display the image. Product image only I will show. Actually you can show complete card like. I will just use the image. How to get the image? So src is coming from product dot what? Image. So here I am giving height some 200, and this div will have a class like card, and padding 2, margin also 2, and style width I will give as some 200 pixel. Just we are using the card. Now actually the product related data need to come here, and here what it is? This products data we are expecting what? Default. If term is empty, by default we need something. What it is expecting? Object with ID. ID is what type? Number. Title is what type? String. Image is what type? String. Initially just I am using these details. One more thing we need to do. What is that? Set products, and here it is empty. Before the search word comes, it is empty. So what we should do? I will write a condition. What is the condition? If, what is it? Such term is equal to empty, means it's not having anything. By default, such term is coming from the state. If such term is empty, what should happen? If not empty, display this. Okay. If such term is empty, what to do? So what we will do? We will display all the products. We will display all the products related data. All the products related data, how to do? All the products related data means I have to just use this again and change the URL actually. It is just collecting all the products. Am I right? It is getting all the products and display. So now it is showing all the products. I will use one option like here, flex wrap. Okay. Flex wrap will keep all the products like this. I'm not displaying in a proper way. Just you design your own way, because I am just showing you the functionality, right? These cards, designs, everything you create by yourself according to your requirement you create. Temporarily I am giving all this. Now what is the point? Anybody can click here and I am searching for jewelry, and I click on the search button. Then what happens? It has to get me only the jewelry products and display the products, right? Now what is issue here? On click is working. One more point is there. When I click on jewelry, so to get only the jewelry products, jewelry I'm using. So, or I search electronics and click on electronics. Only electronics should come. It is okay. But what is the problem? This is not loading again because it mounts only once. Now tell me how to mount again. How to mount again? I need to use a dependency. I need to use a dependency. What is the dependency? Dependency is what? Search term. And still here we have some more points. You see now it works. Why dependency now? Because whenever such term changes, then automatically load this again. Am I right? If such term is changing and you are not loading again, then because every component mounts only once. Now you understood the dependency. That means whenever such term changes, it should load again. It should bring the new data. It should bring the new data. Here you search for, suppose, jewelry and click on the search button, then it has to get the jewelry. That means now dependency is changing. When dependency changes, it has to bring only those details and display. Otherwise, component mounts only once. Now the dependency is working. That means now you are changing the component, means you are mounting the component again whenever the search term changes. You have to define the dependency. So we need to enter the details. Suppose women's fashion. So women's fashion, like this I'm entering. It has to get that women's fashion and display. Actually this term have problem. Electronics. It is not women's fashion, women's clothing actually. Women's clothing. They need that category. That means in their data, that category must be there. Then it will come. What category is available? You can use an alternative. If the word is not found, then say not found. Display another else condition. Right? This is women clothing. This is men's clothing. It has to get the data and display. Now what we are doing, we are transporting data from to the parent to the child. In child, we are collecting the data and we are displaying. That is how actually Amazon search and results are working. Right? In the search bar is a separate component and the results is a separate component. And I am not searching for anything. If I am not searching for anything, then by default it will get all. I'm just showing images. You can display title, price, everything like a card style. I'm just displaying images, right? This is example of context. In real time, where we use context. From parent to child, how we transport data and use the data. Is it clear? So this is another example. This is another example of context memory. Yeah? This is another example. This is Amazon. Amazon.what? JSX. I hope you are clear. So, two state related hooks you learned. One is use state, another one is use context. You have more. Use reference, use memo, use hook, use reducer. So many state related are there that we'll see in next session. Tomorrow we'll do that. In tomorrow's session, we will learn other hooks. Remember, these are all built-in hooks of React. Some new hooks introduced into React 19. Those also you are going to learn. So these are all available with React 18. React 19 added some new hooks. Those also we will learn now because our current version is what? 19. We will see those 19 hooks also, what newly they added into React 19, right? Then tomorrow we'll continue. In tomorrow's session, we will discuss about other hooks. Okay.